Good evening. My name is Tammy Rundle. I'm the Director of School Counseling for the Scituate Public Schools, and I want to welcome everybody to our first, hopefully, annual College Scoop Night. Before we get started, I would like to recognize the following Scituate Public Schools employees for their help in making tonight's program possible. I'd like to thank Ms. Jeannie Mullen in the Counseling Office, Ms. Robin Hunter in the main office, Mr. Bill Richter for the lights and the sound, and Mr. George Sullivan of our custodial staff. Without them, we wouldn't be able to be here tonight. In addition, this event is being videotaped by Scituate TV, and a link will be posted to our website next week. At this time, I would also like to thank and introduce our school counseling staff to you. So when I call your name, if you guys would just stand up. Miss Marlene Hoffman, Miss Moore, Miss Sharon Moore, Miss Mitchell, and Mr. Cooney is over there. And I also want to introduce Tanya Ames, who's been interning with us this year, and we're really happy to have her here tonight. And I'd also like to acknowledge our Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Miss Jennifer Arnold, for her support of the school counseling program. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, the parents and caregivers, and the Scituate High School students for your participation in tonight's event. And finally, I would like to thank and introduce members of our professional panel who freely gave their time to come to Scituate High School and share their knowledge and expertise with our students and families. So we have with us Kathleen Baird from Curry College, Todd Adiatis, perfect. Good enough, from Bridgewater State University. We have Bill McMurray from Roger Williams University, Judy Gormley from Merrimack College, and Heather Mello from Stonehill, and Katie Innes, did I say hey, Katie? I'm sorry. Katie Innes from Northeastern University. So I want to welcome everybody tonight. So the format for tonight's presentation will be as follows. I will begin by posing questions to each of the admissions officers. These questions have been generated by the school counseling staff and from you, parents and caregivers. Because we have many questions and a lot of information to share, we will try to move quickly through this part in order to allow for questions and answers from the audience at the conclusion of this segment. Certainly, if other admissions officers would like to offer their perspective on any of the questions, we would love to hear from you as the answers are being discussed. So in terms of a time frame, I would like to allow about 40 minutes or so for this segment, and followed by a 30-minute question and answer period, and hopefully to conclude our event by 8 p.m. To give the night some context, I thought it would be helpful to share some college admissions data points with you. This year, the Scituate High School Counseling Department processed over 1,800 college application materials for the class of 2018. This number represents over 318 different colleges and universities. Moreover, in the past 10 years, the number of Scituate High School students applying under an early admission or rolling admission program has skyrocketed. The percentage of early applications in 2008 was 11%. This year, that figure has soared to a whopping 46%. In addition, the percentage of Scituate High School students who have submitted applications who have applied under an early admission program has grown from 29% in 2008 to 69% in 2018. Over the years, the implementation of the Common Application, the new Coalition Application, the ability to access information at our fingertips through the World Wide Web have dramatically changed the college admissions landscape, not only for college and universities, but also for the school counseling departments and the students themselves. The thrust for students to apply to college under an early admission program has shifted the entire college process timeline for students. In the past, students would apply by January 1st for most schools. Now, in some cases, students have to apply as early as October 15th of their senior year. The time it takes for a student to make a post-secondary plan, research potential college programs, and readily apply to colleges has been diminished dramatically, and therefore has intensified the process for students and families. This shift has propelled students and families to begin the process much earlier than in past years. Students and families need to be equipped with the knowledge and skills necessary to navigate the post-secondary world. For all of these reasons and more, the Scituate High School Counseling Department has invited college admissions officers to share their expertise and recommendations with you tonight. It is our sincere hope that you find it to be a meaningful, valuable, and positive learning experience. So at this time, I would like to begin our series of questions for the panel. So we're going to start with Northeastern for Katie. The first question that we have, how does a college create their ideal incoming class? What do they look for in choosing students?
Oh, man. There's so much that we look at, honestly. I think I'm going to take probably a two-pronged approach to this. I think the biggest thing is obviously for me, it's deciding what type of student we're looking for, how we're really going to shape our next class moving forward. And then for you as a student, you're thinking, well, how am I shaping my college list and where would I most succeed? And so I think that at Northeastern, we're looking for the student that has a really non-traditional background, just looking at our non-traditional curriculum. So what does that mean for you is that we're looking at students that maybe have done an internship in the past, maybe have done some of outside research in the past, maybe some service kind of mixed in there as well. And I know this sounds like a lot, and we're not looking for that student that's trying to cure cancer every weekend they have a free time, but really just a student that's kind of going above and beyond to kind of create that non-traditional experience. We understand that not every high school has those resources, not every family has those resources, so kind of taking the application with a grain of salt in the sense that we're not, we know that we're not going to shape our class 100% of the time with these students, but really just looking for that non-traditional background. That was super vague. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. Okay. And then I was wondering if you could explain the review process from beginning to end. How many people review a student's file before making a decision?
Sure, sorry, I think you did say that in the beginning, I'm sorry about that. So the way that we do this is we look at page 1, we look at page 2, page 3, and so on. We actually do read every single page of every single application. I was talking to some of your counselors earlier, and they wanted me to share the statistic that we saw 62,286 applications this year. The light's pretty bright up here, but I can see your big eyes right now. I know, our eyes were just as big. But we really do read every single application, every single page of that application. We'll read it once. We'll usually have someone else read it a second time, and then we'll make our admissions decision. So we really do look at every single piece, so please include anything you'd like us to see in that review.
Awesome. Would someone else like to, maybe Bill from Roger Williams, how does your process work in terms of once a student submits their file?
Well, I think like many colleges, we're organized geographically so that there is someone dedicated from our staff responsible for each area of the country. And Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island are broken up into smaller pieces because they're such big markets for us. The territory manager is the first reader to really go through the entire application, make any big notes that one finds from the essay or the trend in the grades, all of that sort of thing. And then we have the opportunity for one-read decisions. If the student is a clear-cut admit, then I and my colleagues have the opportunity to say, yes, go ahead. If there's anything equivocal in the file, it then gets second read and goes to admissions committee where the entire staff and even the dean from the colleges have a chance to kind of weigh in on the marginal kids.
Would you all agree with that? Any other different ways of student file being read? Kathy? Yeah, go ahead.
I could speak on that. Basically, when you read the file, we're looking at GPA. Oftentimes, we'll look at the GPA on the school's transcripts, but we will also sometimes recalculate. And I don't know if anyone else recalculates, but that puts everyone on the same playing field applying. So if you have a different scale that the school uses, various schools use a different scale. It might be 4.0, might be a 4.5, 5.0. So it skews what that GPA looks like. So oftentimes we will recalculate using your main academic courses, and we take in 2 electives at Curry to kind of give you a fair GPA, and we base it on that recalculation. But then look at the school GPA and see what will be in the best student's favor. Then we look at essay, very important piece. So that's going to be a clearer picture of who the student is. When we look into the application, then we look into the recommendations, your coursework, what you're doing for community and service, and all that. And then we'll look into SAT and ACT scores. So we try to have that full picture when we review your application.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about the GPA versus the test scores themselves? Is there like a sliding scale, or what is, I guess, what's Curry's philosophy in terms of test scores for students?
So we're not yet test optional, and I know a lot of schools are moving to test optional, and other counselors up here can speak on that. But typically, what we're looking at is the coursework. Is the student prepared to sit in the classroom in a college environment? Are they prepared to take on those internships that might be available to them? Really kind of looking for that student who can be ready for that process. So GPA is looked on higher in the review at Curry than SATs. SATs are looked at as supplemental information, and we do have a range. So if a student falls within a SAT range and a GPA range, and they're doing well, obviously, with their attendance and everything else, we'll go ahead and make that decision.
Great.
Interviewing is recommended for anyone who falls into a category that can't be supported maybe within our range. So we do have some more input on that. For Bridgewater.
Sure. It's fairly straightforward for me to be able to answer this. As a state university, our admission standards are dictated to us by the Commonwealth, and they're in the program of study for every high school in the state. So there's a lot of transparency there. And so I'll speak both for Bridgewater as well as for the other state universities in the system, in that we put the greatest emphasis on a student's transcript, similar to Curry, in that past performance is the best potential indicator of future success. So we will recalculate as well on a 4.0 scale, and we'll only look at college prep, so your gym and health class are not included, but we do weight it. So in other words, if you have an honors class, that gets weighted 1/2 grade level higher. If you're an AP, dual enrollment, or international baccalaureate, then that gets an entire grade level higher. So it's a 4.0 scale, but if you're hitting home runs in your AP classes on a regular basis, then you have a couple of 5.0s added into that calculation. So we actually do admit kids who have like a 4.53 or what have you. It's pretty remarkable. So at least for the state standards and state university, if you have a recalculated weighted GPA above a 3.0, a B, you can be reasonably assured you're going to be admitted to a state university of Massachusetts. If you're below the 3.0, that's when we have a sliding scale. So that's when your test scores come into play, whether it's SAT or ACT. So the lower your GPA, the higher the test scores need to be. So it's like my international sliding scale hand gesture. If you fall between the cracks, I've been doing this for years, and I still can't juggle. But if you fall between the cracks there in any of those instances, that's really when it's in your best interest to send us recommendations and have filled out an essay and extracurricular activities and things of that nature, because we can enroll up to 10% of our incoming class as exempt from the state standards. We never come close to the 10%, but where we do apply those, and I can speak for the other state universities in Massachusetts, is when we have that supporting documentation that speaks to your ability to be successful in a college classroom. So, submit everything that you can to make the case and really show us who you are as a person, because it does make a difference where it makes, where it's marginal in some cases. If you're below a 2.0, I should say, you cannot legally be admitted to a state university of Massachusetts. actually had the awkward conversation with the state legislator this semester, somebody begging me to bring in a student with a 1.67 GPA, and he said, "Could you please make an exemption?" And I said, "Can you please change the law, because we're just applying it." So if you have a C, below a C average in high school, you'll have to go somewhere else and transfer into a state university or the UMass system.
Right. So piggyback on that question, in your opinion regarding honors or AP classes versus college prep classes, is it better to get a B in an honors class than an A in a CP class? Because we get this question all the time. Anyone care to answer that one?
I'm totally going to
Go
answer
ahead.
that
Go
as
ahead,
both
Todd.
an admissions professional and as a father, right? So my oldest is a freshman at Sandwich High School, and talk about surreal experiences where I'm picking his classes for freshman year, literally knowing some other admissions professional is going to evaluate him based on these in 4 years. But we had this conversation, and the way we settled it, for one, he's in the driver's seat because he owns his high school career, not me. But my opinion is it's better for a student to do well in a class rather than struggle with a C in an AP course. Now, we weighed it, and I explained that. But for me, it's about the student, the fine balance between being challenged and building the confidence that they need to be successful when they go on to college. So, and I think for each student and parent, that's a conversation you have. As an admissions professional, at least for us, I mean, we're pretty clear in how we evaluate those different levels.
So CP would be kind of a standard for us. We do need to see that students complete that college prep level coursework. However, students who are thinking about maybe getting into the honors program or maybe a selective program like nursing, we are looking into those honors and AP level courses in the admission process for especially our nursing, School of Nursing there. So I would encourage students who are seeking that program with us to take on some of those honors and AP level courses within their math and science when they're looking at their Scituate coursework. And if you haven't done that, come in and talk to us about that. Maybe you're really holding your own with those college prep background, and maybe you're going to challenge yourself in a different way senior year. That's your opportunity here as you're rising into those further years.
Great. I have a question for Julie going off that. How much does senior year factor into the college application process? Are senior grades factored in, even if the class isn't complete? Julie, if you don't mind.
All right, hello. So I always tell students Merrimack and lots of other colleges have different application deadlines, whether they be the early deadlines, which tend to be in November, or the regular decision deadlines that can creep into January, February. So really, when are you going to apply? What kind of student are you? Typically, if you've had a pretty consistent first, sophomore, and junior year, colleges will assume that you're going to carry that into your senior year, and therefore we would not require to see senior year grades. They'll come in after you commit to us, and we'll make sure that you succeeded in those classes and held up the standard that we assumed you had. But they're not required to apply. We are sent your schedule to see what courses you are enrolled in, but your grades may not be included if you do apply in November. They might just not be ready yet. But to that point, if you're not a student that fits in that category, maybe freshman year you were figuring things out, and then sophomore and junior year, you really hit the ground running. Maybe you're trying more honors courses, maybe dabbling in an AP. I never took AP classes, don't feel like you have to. But if you do kind of have an upward trend that you'd like to show off, I would encourage perhaps waiting to apply or assuring that your senior year grades are going to be ready if they are something that you want to show off. If you are taking extra courses at the honors level, that waiting that we were talking about, if those grades are needed to bring your GPA up, by all means, you should show those senior grades off. But like I said, they're not required to apply, and that's pretty standard for most other colleges as well.
Because we have a lot of students that send their first quarter grades, and the colleges do ask for them. And I think it's really important, and we continue to hammer home that senioritis for seniors or people that are going to be seniors next year, that they continue to work hard and work strong, and once they get accepted, that doesn't mean like, I'm done.
Oh, certainly not. That was not the impression. I hope I did not.
No,
make that
I'm just
impression,
reiterating that for the students in the audience.
Yes, certainly. Like I said, we do review all transcripts once you commit to college, so admission can be revoked if you did not keep up a good pattern that we assumed that you had. And to that point, whether or not your quarter one grades are sent, schools may request them after the fact. We may look at your application, see 9th, 10th, and 11th, and say, I wonder what 12th looks like. So in that case, you certainly wouldn't want to be having a case of senioritis.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
I think one mistake that a lot of kids make going into senior year is thinking, hey, I've got all my requirements for graduation done except for English, so I can have a really easy senior year. And on the transcript or on the application, we're looking at senior year, what you've signed up for, and we see English 4, maybe chemistry, and then we see quilting for linebackers, bachelor cooking, underwater basket weaving. Make sure that if you're going to be applying to selective colleges, that you take 5 solid academic classes at least in your senior year.
Great, great. Heather, would you like to add anything to that? Are you?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I will just reiterate that we do see and consider all of your coursework and all of the grades that you receive in that coursework throughout your 4 years, including the end of senior year. So just making sure that, again, as my colleagues have advised, taking that strong senior schedule, continuing to push yourself, continuing to get those great grades, because these things do factor into not only offers of admission, but potentially also merit scholarships and things like that you definitely want to be considered for. And then again, offers of admission can be revoked. Your offer admission is always contingent upon the successful completion of the coursework that you're enrolled in when you apply to the institution. So you just want to make sure that you maintain really, really strong throughout the end of your senior year, for sure.
Great. So my next question is, how important are extracurricular activities, leadership in the college admissions process, and does any of this type of involvement stand out more than others?
So we take a holistic approach to the application review, so we're always looking at a variety of factors. Obviously, your academic performance is a huge consideration, a huge driving factor in the admission process, but we are going to consider those other pieces as well, and extracurricular involvement is definitely a big part of that, because we want students who are going to come to college and not just be engaged in the classroom, but to contribute to the community in other ways as well. And so what we're looking for is to see that you're already doing that in some way at the high school level, and hopefully you'll continue that engagement when you join our communities. But I always try to stress that it's really quality of involvement versus quantity, so I don't think you should feel any pressure to build the longest resume. It's not a competition to see who's done the most things. I'd actually prefer to see an applicant maybe with fewer activities, but who was really committed, dedicated, stepped up into those leadership positions, whatever they might be, whether that's being a captain of an athletic team or a vice president, or maybe you're in the drama club and you take on a leadership role within that. I always encourage students to do things because you're passionate about them and because you love doing them, and that authenticity is actually what's going to best reflect you and who you are in the application process, and will also help you find the community that will be the best fit for you and where you can really contribute those passions to the institution that you're joining. So yes, I would say it's definitely, it's very important, but again, do things for the right reasons, not because you think it's what we want to see.
Well said.
And one thing I notice is that many kids underreport how much they work. If you have a job and you work 15 hours a week, that's obviously time you can't spend in the Key Club or in student government. And it's a big piece of who you are, and don't be shy about letting the colleges know how you spend it.
Great, awesome. So my next question is, how important is the school counselor recommendation and teacher recommendations? Anyone? Katie, would you like to answer that?
Sure. I think these both recommendation letters are really important. I think that it's also important on your end to choose recommenders. I mean, I'm sure you can't always choose your counselor recommendation, but for the teachers especially, it's important for us to know what type of student you are, maybe outside of the application realm. So what type of student are you in the classroom? What type of student are you maybe outside the classroom? And sometimes a counselor can speak to that. But maybe even going above and beyond and getting another recommendation letter, just so again, we're seeing what type of student you are, really outside of what's written in the application. I think it's really important to note too that sometimes that, maybe not here, but even at larger public schools, a lot of counselors may not know those students well. A lot of teachers, you may not have a teacher that really knows you too thoroughly, maybe inside or even outside of the classroom. So again, kind of taking this with a grain of salt, but knowing that these teachers and counselors are really going to speak to who you are as a student personally and even professionally in the classroom.
Great. Anyone have anything to add to that? Todd?
I would add that for us anyway, with the GPA being the biggest factor in the admissions decision, if you have above a 3.0, I'm probably honestly not looking at your recommendations. We're just making an admissions decision. But those materials do come into play when you're sort of on the cusp. They're also extraordinarily helpful. Generally, students will give a narrative about themselves, their personal background, their story, adversities they've overcome in their personal essay. But it's especially helpful to see that collaborated with in the recommendation. You have that sort of third-party validation and perspective on it. Adds credence and credibility to it. But it does also say a lot because, I mean, a big factor with your student, or if you are a student, being successful in college is making those connections with other people, with faculty members, with, academic support folks. And so if you are in the habit of doing that in high school, it really is a good indicator that you'll do that in college and be more likely to be retained by your institution, but graduate successfully. So I really do put a lot of weight, and we've literally made decisions on students who are sort of on the bubble based on the weight of the counselor's recommendations. We've got a snapshot of a handful of documents to tell us who you are, but hopefully there's somebody here at your high school who's known you for 1 year to 4 years, and they're going to know you a lot better than we could in moments of reading through your materials. So a letter or a phone call from a counselor goes a long way.
Great. My next question is about the personal essay. How can the essay make or break the application? How important is the essay, and what do colleges like to see in an essay? Bill, would you like to answer that?
I'll be honest, I don't think in my 35 years that an essay has ever made or broken an application thoroughly, frankly. I think the essay it's very important, and it's more important the more selective the college. But I don't think it's nearly as important as people have made it out to be in a lot of cases, quite honestly. That said, what we like to see, what helps the essay contribute to the application, is some genuine reflection on the part of the student. The prompt is meant to get you thinking about something and to recall an instance or to comment on a person who's had a particular influence on you. And we don't want the biography of the person. We want to know why that person has had an influence on you. So genuine reflection, correct sentences and punctuation and grammar, and as long as it's genuine, it will help.
Okay. Kathy, looks like you wanted to say something.
Sure. I think it's the most important piece of the application that I review, because that brings meaning to the application I'm reading. Truly, it brings that person to life in the application process, and they look the same after a while, but those essays are personal. They're different, and they're bringing that person out. So I would recommend that you really spend some time thinking about that. I struggled with it when I was a college student, rising into a college, thinking what I'd write about. Doesn't have to be the most creative piece, but it really does help to talk about your passion, or highlight a memory or a family experience or a trip. It will just make it more entertaining for your college counselors to read, but also highlight that you have skills to carry yourself when you are writing papers for your classes, when you're out there in the job force working, that you're able to write. And that's part of our curriculum at Curry, is becoming strong communicators in that writing piece. So we are looking for that.
Great. Julie, were you going to add something? Did you want to add something?
Sure. Just a couple things. When schools, the previous institution I worked at used to require supplemental essays, which you might see. And just one important note that if a school does ever ask for a supplemental essay, it's usually on the Common App, which might not correct your grammar or punctuation. So it is important to know that if those supplemental essays do come up, it might be wise to draft one in a Word document, really think about it. If a school is asking for a supplemental essay or a supplemental question that would require, say, a 250-word response, they really are looking for some information out of you. They're not just asking it to, make it a little bit harder to apply. For instance, I used to work at UMass Lowell, and when we implemented test optional, we required that if you didn't submit your test scores, you had to submit to us 3 short essays. They were 250 words. And in those essays, I was looking for very specific things. I had a very strict rubric on how to grade those essays, and that was what got you into school without your test scores. So take those supplemental essays seriously if they are asked of you. They can kind of surprise you if you didn't know they were coming. So take time to prepare a response, and that certainly goes for your main college essay as well. Certainly give it some time. And it always is nice to read a story, but then connect it back to you as well. If you want to tell a specific story, make sure that you are taking the time to kind of explain how that story is connected to you personally and not just a story to tell. I really want to know how it impacted you. If it's a story worth telling me that you wanted to tell, how did that impact you?
Great. Are there any topics that students should stay away from?
My trip to France.
Katie?
Athletic injuries. Oh my gosh.
Oh, if you're an athlete, don't write about your sport in your essay. Give us another slice of who you are.
Good to know. Okay, good. All right, awesome. So the next question I would like to ask the panel is the advantages and disadvantages of applying early. That is the trend these days. So Todd, I'm going to start with you. What do you think the advantages or the disadvantages are of using an early action program, of applying under an early action program?
I don't see any disadvantage, except that you got to get your stuff done sooner. But no, at least in terms of early action, I only see upside. We implemented, I would imagine, similar to everyone else on the podium in that you send in your materials by a certain date. For us, it's November 15th, and so long as it's the application by November 15th, your test scores and transcripts and so forth can come after that. But if you meet this early action deadline, you'll get your acceptance letter, if you're acceptable, before the holiday break, which is a nice way to spend the holidays. And if you also file early for financial aid, at least in Bridgewater's case, you'd have both your acceptance and your award letter before the holiday break. Now, the advantage to early action is that it's not binding. So you have the information. You don't have to act on it until late into the spring when you have hopefully heard from all the other schools you want to hear from in terms of both your acceptance and your aid packages. So it really does put the students in the driver's seat. And for us, students who apply early action, if you meet the state standards, you're guaranteed admission. For some of our programs, and I would imagine at other institutions, very competitive programs, or there's limited seats. For us, it's aviation. We only own 11 planes, and we can only put so many students in the air. So if you apply early action, your chances are good. If you wait, those seats may be filled. So there are some of those advantages as well, but I would be a big proponent of early action.
Heather?
Sure. I'd just like to take a moment to differentiate between early action and early decision because institutions often have both. So early action, as was just explained, is actually, it's a non-binding commitment, so you're still welcome to choose from any of the institutions that you've applied to. However, if you apply under an early decision agreement, you are committing to attend that institution if they admit you, and you must withdraw your applications from other institutions. So early decision is when you're saying, this institution is my #1 choice, I definitely want to come here for college, I know that's what I want, and I'm going to indicate that to the school by choosing to apply early decision. So it it's a really strong way to put yourself forward as an applicant, because that school knows how committed you are. But you always have to be aware that you are saying, I'm definitely coming here if you accept me. So it's a stronger commitment, and it's definitely different from early action, which is non-binding. I would say something to consider would be if you're a student who maybe is doing your best work in your senior year, maybe you struggled a little bit junior year, and you're having a strong comeback senior year, and you want us to have an opportunity to see more of that work. That might be one reason why you would potentially wait until a regular decision deadline, so we have more of your senior grades in hand when we take that first glance at your application. But again, if you apply earlier, you hear back earlier. If you apply later, you will hear back a little bit later. So those are the differences between them, but definitely keep in mind, I think, very important, the difference between early action and early decision.
Just with early decision, making that binding commitment, before you apply early decision, you really should be sure within your family that it is going to be an affordable option for you, because early decision does not give you the opportunity to compare financial aid offers.
Great. We're going to switch gears a little bit. What are the students who may be on an IEP or a 504 plan? Can you discuss the impact of the plan on the college admissions process? And is it best for students to disclose or not disclose whether or not they have a disability? Okay, Kathy?
So Curry College has a specific program called PAL, Program for Advancement of Learning, for students with a language-based LD, ADD, ADHD, executive functioning, some of those areas. And all colleges have some type of support available. It's regardless of what kind of supports or needs you have, every college has to be there on board to support their students. However, the supports are different for each school, and the level of supports available are different, and much different from what high schools provide for students. So looking at each college that offers supports available, what those supports include, and what that student actually needs. So if you're on an IEP or 504, you definitely want to start exploring what American Disability Act provides for you as services at college. That's a different kind of tier of support than you've had in college, in high school. So really investigating that. Every school has to have some type of tutoring experience or tutoring services available to you. You have to know where those places are, what location, how often can you go to access support, what's available. Are they professional tutors, or are they possibly, students like yourselves teaching, working with you? What type of setting and professional training have those people had? And what types of support are you looking for? Many of us are driven by our strengths and really realizing those strengths earlier on, but also understanding your weaknesses and looking into that a little bit and exploring it maybe with parents, guidance counselors, teachers to say, listen, I have these great strengths, but I need these areas to succeed. You can't go to a college if you don't feel successful, right? What's the point of college if you don't feel supported? Everyone here has some level of support, but you have to identify what's important for you to succeed. We all want you to succeed, and your parents do, and that's why you're here tonight. So really digging deep this year, next year, wherever you are in the process to find that. And it's a hard thing to do. Trust me, I had to go through it myself when I was looking at schools. I needed the support. I needed to find the place that could support me, where I could build my confidence and find out what those strengths were and how to use those strengths and compensate for my weaker areas. And to me, they felt like they were covering. But there were so many programs out there. but they weren't always perfect. So kind of exploring what's best for you and what level of support you need. And you can do that by interviewing, calling. The guidance counselors can give you a great list. We're down the road, and we actually have a program designed for students seeking the college process but looking for supports, and we'll tell you about our great program, PAL, but it's not for everyone. So we give you a listing of other schools and other programs out there that are recommended, but some of you would just do fine with going to some extra support through an ADA service around different colleges. So really kind of navigating that process early is better. And that's a long answer to your question.
That was perfect. Would anyone else like to add to that? Todd?
I was just going to say, I hope I speak for everyone when I say that it's really best for students to self-disclose during the admissions process, because we know what our level of support services is, and by knowing the details of the program that you've been on in high school, if you've had a foreign language waiver or whatever other details of your own specific plan, if we understand that and understand what you need, we can help make the fit better.
Great.
Yeah, and I would echo that. Definitely disclose. If you're eligible, take advantage of, taking standardized tests untimed or with other support. At least in the state university system, if you have a documented learning disability, then the standardized tests are waived. Now, Bridgewater's test optional, but that applies across the board through the UMass system and the state university system. So absolutely disclose ahead of time. It would also waive the 2 foreign languages if you have a language processing disability. And I think a lot of students who have had services up through high school feel like, well, geez, now I've made it to college. I've made it. I don't need support services. And I don't believe that's entirely true. The nature of the support services probably do evolve, and it varies from institution to institution, but absolutely disclose that and make those services available to yourself in case you do need them, and maybe you don't need to go the first day, but to have those resources would definitely be advisable. We've had students who have not been accepted and then circle back and say, oh, but I am on a 504, and in many cases that can be too late for some students. So do that, and if you are going to apply to colleges and you're going to disclose, we do recommend that you have updated diagnostic testing within the past 3 years. Definitely do that while you're still in high school, and you can get the system to help support that because it's an expensive test. And then most colleges will use that, your actual diagnostic test, to help gauge the level of support that you'll need, academic support that you'll need while you're in college. And the 504 does not necessarily translate over to the college setting.
My next question is, what are the benefits or options for students who perhaps want to start at a community college and transfer to a 4-year institution? And Todd, I was hoping you could explain the mass transfer program.
Yes, it is absolutely a viable option for students on a number of different fronts, not least of which is the economics of it. You can do an entire year at a community college for $5,000. Yeah. That's a course at some schools. The way that it's structured in Massachusetts is that if you go into any of the community colleges in the Commonwealth, you can enter into the mass transfer program. And so generally speaking, at least this is the case with Bridgewater, we have articulation agreements. All the coursework that you take that is above the remedial level, of course, transfers over towards your degree at a state university. So the articulation agreements are great. There are also financial incentives, so there are reduced tuitions and so forth if you finish the mass transfer program. A lot of our students at Bridgewater do take advantage of that. We have actually, of the 3,000 new students we bring in each year, half of those students are transfers. Half. So you can actually take that transfer population and split that in half again. Half of those are coming from the 3 regional community colleges, so Massasoit, Bristol, and Cape Cod Community College. That's a quarter of our new students every year. And of course, the other quarter come from other 4-year colleges and universities around the country. But it's increasingly a viable option. So if you think about doing your first 2 years of college at a community college at $5,000 a piece, and then you finish out at Bridgewater and commute there for your last 2 years, you could have a college degree for $30,000 from beginning to end. And again, that's like half of some private schools for 1 year. So definitely a viable option.
Great, great. I have a question about if a student applies for a specific major or after their first year wants to change majors, can they? Or how difficult is it?
I think it's a good option for many people to come in and maybe explore undecided if they're uncertain of what their major is. But sometimes if a student's interested in a specific program like nursing, we don't have the opportunity at Curry, and maybe you guys do with certain programs as well, where there's not an option to change into that major after the first year. And that can be problematic if a student just wanted to, explore one area, but knew on their heart of hearts that they wanted to go into nursing. So that would be a challenge, and also education, the licensure and how we line up the teaching license in the state of Massachusetts, and maybe you can speak of that too. But with all of our education programs, it's harder to start later in that field. You don't want to add more time after your 4 years. So those are certain programs. Usually the other programs that we offer, you can complete everything within 4 years as long as you declare by second semester sophomore year. But with the exception of nursing and education programs, that you can't do that. In some of our 5-year programs, we have undergrad and master's programs. At Curry, they're specific and they're fast track. So if you're applying into one of those programs, it's very hard to come in late to those.
Great. Does anyone have, Julie?
Just on a more general note, not necessarily to Merrimack, if you're dead set on a major, then it would be wise to research what kind of requirements might be needed to be admitted to a school for that major. There are plenty of colleges out there that have different admission requirements for different majors, so it is important to note that if you are applying into a very competitive major nationwide, such as computer science, nursing, engineering, the standards to get into those programs might be much higher than, say, if you had applied in an undecided major or another major. So that is something to pay attention to at different colleges around the United States. If you maybe aren't so sure about a major, you could apply to a school undecided that might be a reach school for you, and it may be more likely that you'd be admitted than if you had applied to a competitive major. So that is something to note. But if you're dead set into a major already at a young age, then I advise you to apply to that major to the schools that you would like to. But if you're maybe not so sure, it is important to note that different majors can have different requirements. And then similar to those majors, once you're already at a school, at Merrimack, you can change your major, but it is important to note the later you figure out a major like maybe engineering or health science that has a strict curriculum, you may really be interfering with the 4-year graduation, just because programs with strict course supplements, you can't take X until you take A and B, you can really defer that 4-year graduation if you transfer into a major after first semester, after first year, and then even further if you head into sophomore year.
Great. Heather, did you want to add anything? Did you?
I think that summed up.
Okay, great.
I actually have some just real quick interesting stats. I did some research on this, and it's sad that the range is as wide as it is in education. We should have tighter numbers, but nationally, 30 to 50% of all U.S. freshmen enroll in college as undecided. 30 to 50%. So, and then if you know what you want to major in, it's even crazier. 50 to 80% of students in the U.S. change the major once, twice, or 3 times. So if you don't know what it is you want to study, you are not alone. And if you do know what you want to study, give yourself a little room. You know, a big part of going off to college is being exposed to things that you didn't anticipate or haven't seen yet. So if you're the same person going in the door as you were coming out, we've probably failed you. But most curriculum are set up. I mean, there are obviously those majors that have sequence of courses and so forth. But a lot of curriculum at institutions are split into thirds, so that you've got 1/3 of the sort of the common core. You got to take your math, your science, your English, that kind of stuff. 1/3 are for your major, and then you have the final third, which is kind of like your wiggle room. So if you want to double major or major minor, or you change your major, or you come in undecided and you wait till end of your sophomore year to decide, you can still get out in 4. If you change your major a few too many times, as has been said, it can take a little longer than 4 years, which is why nationally we report graduation rates on 4 and 6 year rates. But those national stats I found to be pretty surprising.
I'm going to switch gears. This was a question from one of the parents. In order to play a sport on a competitive level in college, do the students need to employ and take part in the sports recruiting industry? Okay, Julie, would you like to answer that?
So Division I and II colleges in the United States are out recruiting. So if you are interested in being recruited, all of those colleges have what's called recruitment forms on their website, where you would submit some nitty-gritty details regarding your position, what teams you play for, perhaps height and weight, depending on the sport. And that information would get sent to the coaches. If they're interested, they would reach out. I always encourage students to also find the coach's contact information online and introduce themselves via email. It can be a difficult process depending on how selective and competitive colleges are. Division I sports, for instance, you could be signed in, in your junior year. You could already know that you need to go play a year, say we're talking about hockey, you could already know that you need to play a year of juniors, but be signed on as a high school junior. So it definitely is a strict recruiting process, and that does involve athletic scholarships as well. So that would entail you and your coach sending in your transcript to the school to be reviewed. This usually happens as a junior, so we're looking at those grades and seeing if you're admissible, and then they can begin the recruitment process, and you'd be involved in that. So certainly if you are thinking about playing at the collegiate level, even with Division III, the recruitment forms are definitely the first step, and then the conversation may go further than that depending on the team and the school.
Okay, great. My last question is if you guys could just touch upon the role of the parent versus the role of the students in the application process. Any advice for parents? Any advice for students?
All I know is that the students who are the most satisfied with their college choice as freshmen, once they're in school, are the ones who took control of the process themselves from the beginning. I like to use the driving analogy. If we just handed kids in their sophomore, junior year the keys to an 18-wheeler and said, have a nice trip to California. No maps, no GPS, no instructor, no nothing. He or she would have a pretty tough time. But if we have a team of instructors sort of sitting in the front seat with that person and helping him or her navigate the highways and the off-ramps and everything, and sometimes it's a parent who's the driving instructor, sometimes it's one of us at the college side, sometimes it's you. You can assemble your own team of driving instructors, but always have your hands on the wheel as a student. Even little victories can really help you build confidence when you're getting ready to make your first college visit. Kids, you take control. Either make the call to the office or go sign yourself up online. When you get done, you will have accomplished something. It'll feel good. You can move on to the next little piece. But if mom or dad are always doing things for you, you're never going to feel invested in the process.
Anything else? Todd? Oh, go ahead. Oh, Heather, go ahead.
I would just echo that. I think college is really the transition to the beginning of your independent young adult life, and so this is really the time to take those reins. And navigating the college process also means knowing yourself well and making good decisions for yourself so you can find an institution that's a good fit. You can select a major and a career path that's going to be fulfilling and rewarding for you. And so you really do, while you can rely on those resources and supports that you have to an extent, you really want to be thoughtful for yourself, and you really do want to take control of the process. And when you do visit schools, ask those questions. Don't wait for mom or dad or your guardian or whoever's with you to do that for you. Speak with the students, speak with the faculty. You're going to be the one who's on the college campus. These are your future relationships, and so initiating that from the get-go is very important. And it also is impressive, I think, to admission professionals and our faculty and the people who are on our campuses when you step forward and you take the initiative to do that. I think it's something that sets you apart, and it is impressive when we see students advocating for themselves from the beginning. So certainly that's the approach that we would recommend.
Great. Todd?
I would absolutely echo all of that. I like the 18-wheeler metaphor, and I'm gonna tease that out a little bit further. So, in addition to keeping a firm grasp on the wheel, though, I do think that there should be a conversation early in the process among the parents and the student about the guardrails on that trip, and especially the financial guardrails. I think too oftentimes that's the topic that's left towards the end, and this can get really emotional as you're going through the college search process, and financial issues are usually the most emotional because they get left to the end when it's like, well, I've worked really hard, you let me apply, and now we can't afford it. And it's important to look at both the direct costs and the indirect costs. So it might seem really glamorous to go to Florida for college, but a plane flight to and from every time you want to come home is an added expense. And certainly, financial aid and the award letters should play an important role in that, but I think so long as you can negotiate a rock-solid bottom line that makes sense for both the parents and the students, assuming that it's a team effort paying their way through and managing the student loan debt after, I think that's a critical element. Certainly the students need to own it, but if they're not the only ones paying for it, then the parents need to set up those guardrails early rather than later.
Great, thank you. At this time, I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions and answers. I have a microphone, and I'm going to give it to Ms. Moore. If anyone has any questions for the panel? If there are any. Yep. Question back here.
It's hard to say right now.
Hi. So I'm a musician, and I've already started writing my college essay, and I'm writing it mostly about music and its impact on my life. So you said earlier that if you're an athlete, don't write about your sport. So would that same sort of concept apply for me as a musician?
Anyone like to answer that?
I will. I missed that. Okay.
Do you want me to repeat it?
I'm sorry?
Did you hear the question?
I heard the question.
Okay.
Yep, sorry, I just didn't hear the comment over there. But yeah, to answer the question, I think music's a little different only because you could be a lot more creative with music. And so I think that what was mentioned before, and I think it was you maybe that mentioned the don't write about the athletics. I said don't write about athletic injury because athletics is pretty black and white in the sense that you wrote in your the activity sheet that you play soccer. Now you're writing about it in the essay. Like, we get it, you play soccer. But to play an instrument or even to be in a band, I think it's a little different. You can, like I said, be a little more creative, show us what that means to you. So I think yes, to be honest with you, yes. I don't know if anyone else differs with that answer.
No, agreed.
Great. Heather, were you going to say something?
Yes, I think it's sometimes less about the topic and more about writing about the topic that you're choosing in a way that's unique to you as an individual. So certainly if music is something that you're passionate about, or for anyone else out there, whatever your passion happens to be, if you can take that and use specific concrete details and experiences and really paint a colorful picture that shows us why this is important to you and why this is meaningful in your life and has transformed you, then I think it's still going to make your essay stand out. Even if the next essay we read, someone else is writing about music, maybe they're writing about it in a very different way. So I think it's concentrating on the quality really of your writing, even less so than the topic itself, maybe. So channeling that passion, but writing about it in such a way that, again, it is very specific and very unique to you. And that's just good writing. And good writing is really what can make an essay stand out. So definitely go with that. I'm sure your essay will be wonderful.
Yeah. One more thing on that. If you are applying to something like a music program or an art program, those are two very niche programs, and colleges that enroll art students and music students, there's a lot of passion involved in that. So writing your essay about music, if you're applying to a music school, I think that would be almost very important for them to see that you are dedicated to something like music and getting a 4-year degree in music. And same goes for art, where they're going to be looking at something like a portfolio.
There's a question here.
Hi there. I think students can get a pretty good idea about the academics of an institution. What is the best way for a student to learn about the culture of that institution and how they would fit into that culture? What is the best way? Should it be an organized visit, an individual visit? What do you recommend?
I would say definitely come for a tour and an information session, but also, stake out a time where you can be down in the student center, just hanging out to really listen and watch and see that level of compassion for one another. And do people hold the doors for people on your campus? All of that. What are they talking about? That's so important to see at the various colleges.
I always recommend students have lunch in the cafeteria.
Hey, I'm a big proponent of college tours, and I equate it to buying a car. You wouldn't buy a car unless you test drove it. You're going to pay a lot more for your college education than you will your first half dozen or so cars. So get out there and test drive it. But that being said, we all put our shiny, happy people out there as tour guides, hopefully. We're bringing to the residence halls where the floors have certainly been swept. We're putting our best face forward. So I think the idea of having lunch in the lunchroom is great, because you kind of want to go off script and see sort of behind the curtain, as it were. I'm always a big proponent of students seeking out recent graduates from your high school who have perhaps enrolled at the institution where you're interested, because they're coming from a similar background as yourself, and they're going to that institution, and so they'll know how that translates, because it's different for different people coming from different places, going to different places. But then you get that unvarnished student's perspective, which I think is really, really useful. And if you can talk to multiple students, even better.
Think about what you'd like to learn about the place and ask the admissions office to help you learn it, whether it's going to a class in an area that you're interested in, a sidebar conversation with a coach or a theatrical director or a music instructor. Color outside the lines and let the admissions office help you with that.
Other questions? Yep.
So 2 questions. First for you, since I was just mentioned, do we have a day when we do bring back alumni to talk about the colleges they went to?
We do. We have a Return to Scituate High School Day, and we invite alumni to come back to talk to juniors and seniors. It's usually in December.
Okay, yep. Super. And then for the panel, scholarships, merit-based, what perspective on finding those? I even hear sometimes there's a lot that go unclaimed. How do you find those?
So this is another question I think that every one of us is probably going to have a different answer to, but just talking about Northeastern in general, I'm sorry about that for kind of putting my plug in here, but merit-based scholarships at Northeastern is something that you do not need to apply to. It's something that we find students we think would be selected for a merit-based scholarship as we're going through the application review process. So I can tell you, generally speaking, we take the top 10 to 30% of the applicant pool, depending on what that looks like year to year, and we award them a merit-based scholarship. These range anywhere from $1,000 to full tuition programs, and then we do also do need-based financial aid as well. Promise to meet your family's entire demonstrated need. Should add that in there. I'm sure people have other answers to that.
So we offer merit-based scholarships as well. Those are given out based solely on a student's academic performance in high school. So we're considering their GPA, the strength of their curriculum, test scores if they are submitted. We are a test optional institution, so they're not required to be considered for either admission or a merit scholarship. But our scholarships range between $10,000 and $25,000 per year. They're awarded each year, so that would be over the 4 years at Stonehill. You'd say it was a $10,000 award, it would be $40,000 over the course of the 4 years. But I think your question about unclaimed scholarship money is probably less relevant to the institution and maybe more so related to scholarships out in the community or that organizations provide. And we always encourage students to seek those things out. If a parent works for an organization, do they provide scholarship opportunities for the children? Are there opportunities within your community that you can apply for that you might have a good chance of receiving, and using those sources to help supplement the funding that you're getting from the institution, both through the merit-based scholarships as well as the need-based aid that we would be providing.
There's a question.
It's the same answer.
Hi. I know SAT changed its format last year for the first year, and so it's on year 2. I do know from one of your schools, I know one of the athletic coaches who last year, not this year, was recommending his recruits take the ACT because there hadn't been a change, and the admission staff had advised him that they weren't really quite sure how to interpret the new SAT. And so I don't know if you have any comments on the ACT versus the new SAT, and also too is, I'd be curious, which schools here are test optional?
SATs and ACTs vary all over the place, and oftentimes with this new SAT, we were wondering what that was going to turn out looking like. Now we all know. We've had a full good year. We had a test market year last year, full year now. So we're really going to know about the SATs and what they're looking at for prospective students and how they are looked upon. We always recommend SATs and ACT that the student explores both tests, because each test is so different from one another that their strengths could lie in one of those tests. What if you don't try that test? How would you know that? So take both SAT and ACT. It can't hurt. It's only going to tell us oftentimes what's the better score out of that test, and we'll use that benefit of the doubt. We'll take that highest score. So I encourage both tests, and we are optional if a student's applying for a PAL program for SATs, but we're not test optional, but we're hoping to move that way, and most people are moving that way.
One more thing I'd like to know, I know you mentioned recruiting. I can speak for Division I and II. ACT scores are required for athletic recruits per the NCAA. So even if a school is test optional, it wouldn't be test optional if you become an athletic recruit.
Tammy, we have another.
Anyone else want to talk about the ACT, the new SAT, and the impact on?
Yeah, the state system was given a conversion chart, so we were able to compare apples to apples in the first year that was recalibrated, and went pretty smoothly. We just had to really pay attention to the dates of the test scores as we were reviewing the applications, but there weren't any translation problems. I was sharing with the folks at my table at the dinner we had prior to the event Generally in the Northeast, we see students take SATs. I'd say probably 90% of our applicants apply with SATs, seems pretty standard. I have seen instances, though, where, in our practice is to super score. I know that sounds like I just stole it from McDonald's. It's like a legitimate admissions term. So we take the best math and the best verbal of all the times you've taken the SAT, combine them for the best possible composite score. Not every school will do that, but it's a pretty common practice. I've seen an applicant this cycle who was, applied below 3.0 on the sliding scale, was 30 points short on the SAT. Took it a second time. He was 10 points short on the SAT. I'm like, come on, you're killing me, Smalls. The kid took the ACT and he crushed it, and he was admitted. So, I mean, they are different tests. You may do better on one than the other just because of the format. So, if your default's the SAT and you're not really getting the score that you feel like you should be getting, I'd be a big proponent of trying the other.
Tammy, we have a question back here.
So, question back to the college visitation theme. Now, it's important for the student to visit a college to understand whether or not they'd fit in, but does a student visiting a college come into play with an admissions decision? So does admissions track who does and who doesn't go to the formal tour, and does that play into your decision on admitting a student?
It might. If we have a student that we're evaluating at the 11th hour and we're on the fence and the student lives 12 miles from campus and has never been to campus, we might consider that a less than serious application. But we don't spend a lot of time counting how many times the kid has been on campus, and sent us cookies and all of that. It just, I think if you are interested in a college, you should demonstrate your interest in whatever way you can. If that's visiting the campus physically, great. If you can't visit the campus, you should at least reach out and try to make contact with someone there who knows that you are interested. That's what it's all about. I think some of the more highly selective colleges, may get involved in, whether it's better to come out to a high school visit or whether to actually come to the campus or what have you. But I think for most of us, we're just interested in knowing that there's some level of seriousness behind your application. And if you're fully qualified and you've never visited, you're going to get in anyway to most of the places.
I would say it's reasonably safe to assume that if you filled out a form online or you registered for that tour, we're tracking it. Whether we use it, varies from institution to institution, but I mean, the analytics that we have now are ridiculous. Every contact that you have with your prospective institution online, it's tracked. Some places will go so far as the number of times you've been on their website and open their emails that they send you. And again, the extent to which we use that in admissions decisions, varies. Probably more apt to be used that way at selective schools. But yeah, we're tracking it.
Well, thank you all for coming. I've given a lot of good information tonight. I kind of got a guardrail question. If your family contribution has been determined and it's just above tuition for your first student, when the second student goes, is there going to be any discount? I know it's not going to be free, but is there anything I can look forward to?
Basically, if your financial circumstance hasn't changed that much, your expected contribution is going to be divided between the two kids. And it'll be prorated to some degree based on which of the colleges is more expensive than the other. But you're not going to be expected to come up with twice as much money out of pocket. Now, that doesn't mean that the colleges are going to meet your demonstrated need for both kids. So that'll depend on the colleges themselves. But the expectation of you will not be double what it is now when you have two kids in school.
And I will say, we do host a financial aid night every October. And we have, we partner with MEFA, the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, comes in, they do a really nice presentation for families. to answer those questions.
And can I give a part two? As far as I know, we all think we have the greatest students in our state, but is there a quota of out-of-state students that you look to fill to make your school more attractive, saying we got someone from every state or worldwide?
Again, I think every college is a little different here. We probably have different answers, but we don't have a quota per se, but we do want to keep in mind that we don't want to fill all of our seats with Massachusetts folks. As you can probably imagine, the students, this is a fairly small town. Probably you've been with these same students over the last, 11, 12 years now, and so why would you want to go to a school that just had everyone from Scituate and the surrounding areas? So we do try to differentiate our recruitment, and so we have what's called target territories or target markets, so we do try to target a little bit everywhere, but I think that sometimes it just happens naturally too. If you get students from all 50 states, probably some of the larger schools, Northeastern does. We were missing someone from North Dakota, so we found them, but again, we didn't, I know, woohoo, but we didn't go out there and really drag them back to Boston, so it just worked out, but we do try to differentiate.
I can just say one more thing about scholarship. You might have something to look forward to. If you have two students that are going to be in college at the same time, there are colleges that offer sibling discounts if both of them are enrolled at the same time. And it's, if you have two students, it's this percent, 3 this, 4 this. And then schools also may offer legacy scholarships. So those are two things for you to look into. If the student is going to be enrolled at the same time, is there a discount? And then is there a legacy discount? So you might have something to look forward to.
Great. Any last questions? Great.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Does anyone want to comment on the interviewing at your schools? If you want to do interviews, I know a lot of the students ask that question of the counselors, should they interview or not? And some schools do allow interviews and some don't. So I just wanted to get your perspective on that.
I think I would echo what you just said. I think it'll be different school to school. Some schools won't even offer interviews. Some might actually require, and then some schools fall in between where they're offered but not required, which is where we fall. But I think if an interview is offered and you have the opportunity to come to campus and have a personal conversation, whether that's with a member of the admissions staff or with a current student perhaps, it's a very strong demonstration of your interest. It's a great opportunity to get your personal questions answered, maybe to get a sense of that campus culture and what it's like. So I would say if that's a school that you is top of your list and you're seriously considering attending and there's an opportunity to interview, it's something that we would encourage. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll be at a disadvantage in the application process if you don't have the opportunity to interview, but if you do, then it's a great thing to take advantage of for sure.
We don't do interviews at Roger Williams, but that doesn't mean we don't want to talk to students. If you are interested in a college that does not offer personal interviews, find out who the territorial counselor is for Scituate from that college, and if you have questions, write an email, make a phone call. Actually, we love to hear from you. I was wondering, what's the sophomore sequence for your architecture program? I would love to take that question from a kid someday. It would be great. But reach out to the colleges if there isn't that interview opportunity, but if it is there, like Heather said, take advantage of it. It can be fun. It's usually just a really great conversation. Oftentimes you're talking with a young alum of the school, or maybe even a senior who's there as an intern in the admissions office, and they can really give you a sense of what life is like.
Great. We got one more.
How many students do you accept in your early action pool percentage, and how many do you accept percentage in your regular?
Ours is about 75% in both groups.
Yeah, we also try to keep it pretty similar because like we mentioned in the very beginning, we don't want to make it feel like students should apply, or even if we're talking like early decision, they don't need to make that commitment just to be able to get admitted. We do our very hardest to keep the acceptance rates the same. So the last year was about 18.6, 19% across really all of them. We did see a huge increase in EA, so early action, and so for you that might mean a deferral, but it's not a negative decision. You're still in the running. We just don't want to make so many decisions so early because we do have some wonderful RD applicants coming in just later on.
Tammy, we have another question.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Just simply wondering about the application process and the transcripts, if absences and tardiness is something you might look at when choosing students. Also, I'm wondering if anybody's interested in speaking to the social networking or the social media aspect. Quickly, I'm sure it's a huge topic, but just in general. Thank you.
We look at attendance, and if there is long-term attendance issues or tardiness, then an interview would be recommended if colleges interview, or reaching out to the counselor to explain that. There's reasons sometimes behind them, and we're looking. Just really be conscientious of the time you're spending at school, and putting full effort into that process is really recommended. And then the other question.
The other question about
Was there
social.
another question? Oh, social media, I would say, be careful. I mean, even as people are looking at jobs, people are looking into their Facebook statuses sometimes. They might have access to that information if there was a red flag in the application process, or we weren't getting enough information out of an applicant, or, sometimes a counselor might look up to see what that student is trending, and so it can be harmful to some students, but usually it doesn't hold a big portion of what we do in our work.
Great. Well, I would like to thank the panel tonight. You were excellent, very, very knowledgeable, and very helpful to our families and students. And I want to thank the parents and students for coming out tonight. I hope you found it helpful and that you learned a lot. As always, you know that the counselors are here to support you and your student through this process and their time at Scituate High School. So thanks for coming out.